Host, Kelly Howard, VP of Marketing at PeopleTransformation.ai. For our corporate clients that are on today, if you don't know us, we are at the intersection of helping leaders see what's really happening across their people network, translating that into the next right moves, and supporting each employee through change with our change agent, Gia, who is an empathetic AI coach. When you add in the reporting that'll blow you away, outreach, and so much more, this platform is amazing and it's never been done before. And if you're a coach, a founder, an author, a thought leader, you really want to have a conversation with us too, because we are doing something in this space that has never been done before either. It is cutting edge IP opportunities, and I'll have this QR code up several times throughout Jeff's talk today. So anyone watching is welcome to jump on a call with one of our founders and see where the new level of empathetic AI can take you. Today, with over 350 registrations for our event, it's apparent that Jeffrey Morris is a star in his own right. The founder of DreamSmart Behavioral Solutions, with a Master of Arts in Executive Coaching, Master Trainer, Executive Career Coach, Jeff is a 5-time best-selling author, creator of the Trust Flow movement, and doctoral candidate. With a passion for coaching, training, educating, and mentoring leaders and influencers around the world. Jeffrey Morris, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this chat with you, Kelly. Couldn't wait.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. So I'm just going to jump right in because we only have a short while today. So let me ask you this. When leaders say to whomever, we need AI, what's the real problem and what are they missing or what do they miss?
So we're trying to identify the real problem with AI adoption and what may leaders miss. That's what I'm hearing. Is that the right question?
That's correct. Yeah.
So when I think of that, I think of things like leaders needing speed, consistency, visibility, and cost control. That's really what they're saying when they're trying to adopt AI, because that's the promise of AI, right?
Right.
But what they miss is this. And let me know if I'm speaking too fast for you, Kelly, because I can get going, okay?
Yeah, no, between the two of us, we'll be like a couple of chipmunks.
So what they miss is they treat AI adoption and change like a software upgrade.
Okay.
When it really is what I call a trust intervention.
Oh,
that
no,
requires
trust intervention.
It's a trust intervention. That's right. I'm sure in some of the other questions, we're going to probably dive into that to a little bit, but with any change management strategy or whether it's AI or whatever that's going to be, it comes down to trust and what I call micro trust activations.
Okay.
What are the things that we're triggering that builds trust in the AI and the people that's implementing the change? Do we trust them? So if people think AI is like surveillance on them, if they think it's unfair to them, they think it's going to replace them, then they move into what I call quiet sabotage.
Right.
Like they'll go along just to get along.
Okay. Okay. It's that quiet backstabbing kind of hiding in the corner.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about what leaders are missing, here's what they should start with. I suggest that they start with after a few years of experience of dealing with this. They should start with things like, what are we actually improving with AI? Because there's a lot of promises and we need to answer the question, what are they improving? Who's going to be affected by it? And then what does fair look like?
Right. I mean, they should be asking the real questions instead of
real questions.
You said. You know, it's not just a software upgrade.
It's not just a software upgrade, but leaders often miss that because they're excited about the speed and the accuracy and the consistency and the cost savings. But if they don't take into fact that the human doings of work are human beings, then the cost goes up, goes up anyway.
Right. Right. Yep. No, you're right. So tell me this in plain language. I'm going to switch tracks on you for a second, but we need to talk about this because DreamSmart is behavioral intelligence, right? So what does behavioral intelligence add that most AI initiatives are missing?
One of the things that you didn't say, my background, Kelly, was I'm a former Marine. I'm a former Marine sniper.
I didn't know that.
I have what we call the 4 A's. We assess their environment before we go in.
Right.
Right. And then we create some type of action plan around that. then we actualize that plan.
Okay.
Like usually the plan that you start with is not the plan that actually works. And
Right.
then we have to adapt that plan in real place.
Okay.
So behavioral intelligence in this platform, when we're thinking about GIA and the things that we're going to do there, because we can program it with behavioral intelligence, we can see who's going to likely comply, we can see who's going to resist, and we can see who's going to game the system. Because we can see things like resilience,
Mhm.
adaptability, the ability to be able to pivot. And when we're thinking about, I call these waterline things,
Right.
we can see where fear is going to surface, is going to hide behind the line because they're
Okay.
afraid to change, or they're not likely to change. Who's going to be easily complicit because they can pivot very easily. So when we're thinking about this waterline behaviors, we're really thinking about fear, status, identity, fairness in the process, and control. So it gives leaders the ability to tailor a custom solution with the strategic, outcomes that they want to have as outcomes in their, adoption of AI.
Okay. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So this is what beneath the waterline is. Those are those
Yes,
drivers. All
that's
right.
right.
Um, so then I think you've told me before that without behavioral intelligence, you'll get usage but not buy-in. So
Man,
tell me about the buy-in piece.
that's so critical. If anybody's listening in the audience and they know something about buy-in, they probably heard a gentleman named Patrick Lencioni talk about buy-in. And he says that weigh-in is buy-in.
Okay.
And if anybody's taking notes out there, here's something from the soon to be Dr. Jeff. I'll call it SVH. Because I'm a Marine, I'm going to give it to you in Sierra Victor Hotel. Every person that you meet, CEO, COO, CHRO, all the way down to the followers in the organization, want to be seen, valued, and heard.
Yeah.
When they're seen, valued, and heard, even if the plan doesn't go the way that they want it, they feel like they've been listened to and buy-in increases.
That is so true. So true. And I mean, yep. So
I see
that's
you thinking there. What's going on in your mind right there? I
yeah,
see
no,
you
I'm
thinking.
thinking about that because I have not actually heard you say that exactly that way before. And yeah, I mean, because I I mean, I'll weigh in for 1 second on this. When we think about corporations, AI, employees, bringing everything on board, a lot of times it's kind of from a watching space, right? Not a being in it space.
Mm,
And when you start really like we need to look at people as people and we see them, we value them, and we hear them, then we switch the conversation that's going on in their brains and in our heads and our hearts.
that's very powerful.
Yeah.
I call it in context,
Yeah.
right? AI is not a static thing. It's a how are we treating AI in the context of our workplace today? Then what does tomorrow look like? And then what do we need to be planning for in the future when things like COVID-19 hits?
Right.
You can't plan for that. But when people are seen, valued, and heard, and they have co-creation in this process, buy-in increases. So I'm gonna give you the coach Jeff signature line.
Okay.
And the signature line is data tells you what happened. Behavioral intelligence tells you what happens next.
Okay. Let's just talk about behavioral intelligence for a minute. How does
Okay.
that work in with what you're saying right now and into the platform? Tell us how behavior. Tell us what behavioral intelligence is for starters. What's the
So
baseline?
what's really cool, Kelly, is you said that things like this haven't been done before. And typically AI adoption is a one-way street.
Mhm.
It's the external organization, the internal organization telling you externally what needs to happen for the adoption. What we're doing with this platform is unique because we can program it through our behavioral intelligence analysis. We actually have what we call a behavioral analysis unit. I happen to be the head of that unit, so I'm telling
Right.
you,
So you're the right person to talk to.
experience, right? Through a series of what we call strategic buy-in strategies, one of the things that we can do is look at someone's behavioral analysis, and we can see how well they can be coached, if they're coachable. We can see their emotional intelligence, or what we call emotional regulation, right? Their emotional resilience. We can see how we will create intrinsic motivation, how we cultivate the right environment. And then we have them with what I call behavioral self-mastery. The idea that we can own our behaviors and be proud of our behaviors, but also manage the things that will likely cause friction so that we don't become the best people we can be. And adoption always comes down to your best people being better, right? And bringing those who are a little slower along in the process by coaching, by clarity, and mentoring. So we have some really unique ways to program a person's behavioral analysis into our unit. We can see things like trust and all those things. I won't go too much into it, but just know that we have a behavioral backed process that's 25 years of data, validating 125 countries and available in 11 languages. When you say that nobody's doing this, I don't think that anybody is
doing it. So, but that brings a question up, and you are very, very big on talking about trust. And
Yes.
we have to make sure that we, as in PTAI, People Transformation AI, and as in the people that we are our clients, that they are caring for the trust of the employees and those. So how does that work? I mean, I know there's guardrails. I've seen it work, but we had this conversation yesterday and we didn't get into it really deep, but can you get into it just a little bit about
Sure.
why do people, like, we don't want people to think that they're being surveilled, right?
That's right.
Talk about that just a tad.
So when we think about trust, it's the ultimate competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Right? When people often have on their site, hey, we trust, they have it as a slogan and a value, but most people don't know how to scale it. They don't know how to make it operational. They don't know how to make it observable. They don't know how to make it repeatable. And
Okay.
trust is like a muscle that has to be developed. And because we all come from different perspectives on trust, we can't just say, hey, trust matters. The question is, how does it matter to each person? Again, I'm going to talk about trust in context because it's not static. Because if we're having these micro trust activations and micro activations, behavioral activations, we're building this trust muscle. And so the more times, let me give you an analogy, Kelly. When you throw a rock into like a pool, a pebble into a pool, and it has this ripple, and you throw it again, and it has a bigger ripple, and you throw it again, it begins a bigger ripple. And the platform that we're creating, we call this a trust flow tsunami, because we repeatedly showing things like character and competence and connection and communication and consistency. Again, being a Marine, I have 12 C's. I won't give you all of those things, but just know that trust is intentional. It can't be static. We must be able to coach it. We must make it observable. We have to make it repeatable.
Yeah,
Does that answer the question?
it does. I guess basically what you're saying is that when you build everything in like you already have, and the users, everyone that's using it realizes that they can trust what's going on, and then they see the benefit,
That's right.
right? Because we're not going to, okay, this is not a sales call, guys, so we're not going to dive into the benefits, but we will just say that when people see the benefit of coaching in an environment where they're being trusted and trustworthy, it just escalates.
That's right. And
And
it's something that can be developed over time. Kelly, I've coached multiple teams in this over the years. And the most recent example was a group that I was working with that said, hey, we want to be the number one division in all of this company. There were 32 teams. They were somewhere about middle of the pack. And so when we left after our 2-day engagement, we began what I call building the trust muscles. And trust was a part of every conversation that we had after that. It was 7 conversations. And you could see this team's trust, what I call trust progression curve, Kelly. going from functional trust. Yes, we have highly valued professionals, seasoned professionals, and then we work through what I call humility-based trust, which is the second stage of trust.
Right.
Humility-based trust that says, can I be trusted? Can I let my guard down with Kelly because she shows consistency and character and those things? And then we started to work on behavioral-based trust because we have this way to assess how you do trust and getting to eventually what we call blind trust. When you trust the leader in uncertainty, right? Even when you don't understand all of what's happening, you trust because they've consistently created these micro trust activations. And an example that we give, Kelly, is the Air Force Thunderbirds. They fly at about 500 to 600 miles an hour in formation, and they fly at 18 inches, which is like this much.
I know.
This much at 500 miles an hour, screaming down the airway, and the only person that they see is the leader in front of them. They have to trust that that leader is highly competent, has character and connection because they've shown up with consistency. So they work through a blind trust curve and they follow the leader into what they're doing. It's pretty amazing. That group, by the way, did text me. I don't have it with me, but they sent me this Tour de France jersey, and that was their kind of their call sign when we asked for this identity. They were all in this race and everybody's points mattered. So they did end up being the number one team in the entire division of 32 teams.
Wow. Congratulations.
And we could track it back to their trust muscle. We could track it back to their trust.
Of course you can. It's changes everything, doesn't it? So, so let me say real quick that everybody watching, if you have any questions, feel free to, throw them into the chat or put them in there later, and we will go back and look at them, and I will make sure that Jeff sees them. So if you're not on here live and you're watching the replay, throw your questions in there. I will be watching. All right. So let me ask a couple more questions because I could just be like, I love talking to you, so I might just dive off the deep end, but let's try not to. So tell me this, and we've talked about this a little bit, but just in case there's anything else you want to mention about it, where do emotions show up most in AI adoption? And how should the leaders respond to that?
I just gave a workshop with a local group, and they had a leader survey, and the leader survey mentioned AI 25 times. It was mentioned more than any other concern for this leadership group. So to address the emotions, you're going to have certainly things like fear, right? Because everybody thinks that when AI comes, the job security is going to go out of the window, right? So fear is going to show up for us. You're going to have things like skepticism because we haven't built trust. We don't think that it could be fair. You're going to have things like overwhelm because typically these initiatives have so much complexity and they're just getting one thing after another, one email after another, one email after another, one announcement after another, and they're not taking it to account the complexity involved and then pride, of loss when we're thinking about these things. So you have fear, you have skepticism, you have overwhelm, you have pride, and leaders cannot, or organizations cannot run away from these emotions. They have to name them. More importantly, create a pathway forward, right, that eases and minimizes those things.
Yeah.
So here's 3 moves I talk about when we're dealing with these emotions. We have to make sure that we name them because they're real. Because we've already said that these people aren't human doings, they're human beings, right? So we have to validate their feelings, right? Feelings are real. And then we have to create clarity in our messaging in every way that we can, whether that's from our change champions, that's our emails, that's our managers, supervisors. We have to be clear about what's changing, why are we doing it now, and how am I going to be affected? And then create a pathway for co-creation, right? Because we have the idea that everybody is SVH, seen, valued, and heard.
Okay. And I have another question that I want to ask you, and I want to make sure that I haven't already had you answer this in another piece, but let me just ask you this really quick. What are 2 to 3 behaviors that you can predict whether AI will be adopted or quietly ignored?
So I like to give them M's.
Okay.
Again, I'm a Marine, right? So we got a lot of
Yeah,
acronyms,
you got the C's, the M's.
SBAs, and the 4As, and all of these things.
Oh, we're gonna remember it all, aren't we?
Yeah, right. So if you're taking notes, when we're thinking about behavioral change, um, I give it to you in M's. First, we have to model the behavior that we want. What's the outcome that we want? And do we model the behavior for our followers or direct reports or whatever you call them in your organization? Am I modeling that behavior? Right. And then we have to mentor that behavior. And mentors act as resources, right? They act as sounding boards and they provide access to other resources as mentors. So that's the second M. The third M is we have to monitor the change.
Okay.
Right? In real time. We can't think that, hey, here's a change and people are just going to automatically buy in and the change happens. That's when frustration happens. But if we're having these micro conversations about why changes matter to you, where are you struggling? How's it going? How can I support you? And we're monitoring that, we'll see that the change initiative can get greater buy-in. And then we have to create motivation around it, not external motivation. Because as adults, that never works. You may ask this question later on. So we have to cultivate the conditions for why this, why now, and what does it matter for me to create intrinsic motivation. And then we can multiply it and scale it throughout the organization. So adoption becomes easy at that point.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is that when we talk about AI adoption on these platforms and a platform that's as in-depth and empathetic and unique as people transformation, it really is people transformation because we're working with people. The software is there or the AI is there. It's just a matter of figuring out how it works well with or how the people work well and the AI works well with them. Does that sound right to you?
It sounds on point. Have you heard the adage that hurt people?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I'm gonna give you a Coach Jeff signature line:
Okay.
transform people, transform others.
Oh, nice. Nice. I like that one. So,
Culture doesn't happen by accident. It happens by transformation from the people doing the work. And when we're intentional about the change that we want to make and we can add the human context to it, like Gia and the platform that we have does, we create significant cost savings and all the other benefits that we're not going to talk about. But it changes the culture, right? As the culture's changed, it's because the people's changed.
okay. That you nailed it, right? We could probably stop right now, but we're not going to. I have a few other questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
Okay, so I only have a couple more questions. So um, I actually think that you started to speak to this, but let me get you to dive a little bit deeper. And when teams don't trust the change, what should leaders do in those first few days, those first 7 days, the beginning of the implementation days? What should they be doing?
Mm. There's probably 3 or 4 things I can think of. I'm going to give you, like, I want everyone to kind of have a picture of a compass with north, south, east, and west. And I call it the intrinsic motivation compass, with trust being the top, right? North. And then we have to create, again, clarity in the east. People need to have clarity when we're thinking about behavior. Again, I've already said, why this, why now, and why should this matter to me? Right? What's the goal? What's the outcome? What's the objective? Is it fair? Right? Is it just? All those questions should be a part of either frequently asked questions or town halls or a feedback loop of some sort. So we have to have clarity, and then we have to remain curious. There's something that I teach called the coach approach, Kelly. And I'm talking to leaders about advice, because as leaders, we want to give advice. And there's a book called Stop Giving Advice Because It Doesn't Work.
It's so true. It's so true.
I think that's the title of it. And it's just be curious a little bit longer. If someone's not adopting the behavioral change that you want or the strategic change that you want, you have to remain curious and ask questions. So if we have trust at the north and we have clarity in the east and we have in the south, we have coaching by asking questions and allowing autonomy in how this work is still going to be done. And then, right, we can have competence, right, in the leader. Competence in the leader has to show up at some point because they have to trust that the leader is skilled at what they're asking you to do as well. And keeping in mind, the leader's probably going through the same change that you are. So they're human beings too. And giving them, I'm going to give you another acronym: grace, truth, and time to change. Everybody needs to be seen, valued, and heard. But in that process, we have to give them grace. And I wish I had another word because that kind of sounds churchy, grace.
Ah, but it's such a good word, though.
Right?
Yeah.
People need grace. They need truth. What's really happening? That's why I say clarity. And they need time to process change in the way that they're wired to do it. And that's what G is able to do. We can create trust. We can create clarity in the messaging. And we're going to have two-way conversations. I meant to mention this earlier. So it's not a one-way conversation where change is coming at you, change is coming at you. We're going to actually nudge you along and say, hey, how's the change coming? What resource do you need? Right? We can have two-way conversations in real time. That's what I'm saying. In the context and the flow of work and the flow of trust, like, matters. And that's what this platform is able to do. And then we have just the competence of the leaders. We're going to be building their competencies and capabilities and character and all those things too. So it's this complete ecosystem that really does speed the transformation of people.
Yeah. And you and I, we know the back end. And so we can have this conversation. But just for everybody listening, in case you're not quite sure, like, well, who's Gia? So Gia is the empathetic AI that we were speaking of earlier.
Mm.
She's the coach within the system. She's also, we call her she, but let's just call her she. It sounds better.
Yes.
Right? She's the one who reaches out to check on people because let's say that I'm in a corporation that's going through this kind of transformation, and I have said, oh, I'm not quite sure, right? Like, I'm not quite sure if I'm hitting my goals. I'm not quite sure if I feel comfortable, like, yeah, whatever. So she reaches back out because she has the nuanced ability to go, okay, Kelly, how is it working? How can I help you? How can I support you? And it's not like anyone's watching that conversation. We may have a lot of Jeff's behavioral DNA built in, but nobody's watching the conversation to look over somebody's shoulder to see what they're doing. So I think it makes a really big difference because it builds that trust.
Yeah.
I do want to let me ask you this one quick question because, again, we've jumped around a little bit, but I want to make sure that we also, because we talk about people transformation, but it's leaders transforming too. So what do leaders get wrong about communication during change? And what's the simple fix?
Would you mind if I step back just for a moment,
Nope,
Kelly?
go
Because I
for
don't
it.
think I answered your question the last time about the things that leaders can do.
Okay.
I kind of got off on a tangent, but the question came
That's
back to me. I
okay.
want to make sure I want to make sure that they need to have some type of champion group,
Okay.
champions for change, some type of listening sprint.
Okay.
Right. Again, that's behavioral intel.
Right.
Hey, why this? Why now? What does it matter to me? That's real time in the context, what I call information. And then in the next days to follow, they should be some type of clarity around what things are AI going to be responsible for and what things do humans still decide. Like, so people have comfort
Right.
with that. And then is it going to be fair? Is it going to be transparent? Is it going to be visible? And do I have an appeals process? If change isn't going well for me, who are my champions that I can go to so that we have the highest buy-in? And my coach Jeff's signature line for this one, Kelly, is the first week isn't for rollout, it's for trust setup and start to lifting the trust muscles, building the trust muscle.
Okay. So
That's
yes,
what I'm
we did talk
focusing on.
about that. I was asking you about those first 7 days. And so
Yeah,
it's really about buying into or building the trust muscle first.
yeah,
Okay.
right. And what was the last question? Was it about communication and change? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was what do leaders get wrong about communication during change? And do you have a simple fix on that?
Yeah. I would say, again, we want to coach in the context, because here's what usually happens is there's an email that goes out, there's an announcement that goes out, and all the people in the organ, they're really happy, but the people kind of, as we filter it down through the chain and down to the follower level, people are going, why does this matter? Why now? And what does it mean for me? You've talked about this. I call them the three W's again, right? Those
Right.
acronyms. So when they're communicating change, we have to really get intel from people really on the ground. We really do have to explain and share with them why this, why now, and what the change matters for them. And don't do it in an email, right? That can be a part of the strategy, right? And don't make it so that change seems complex. We need to break it down in simpler terms. Even though we're excited about it, we need to be on the other side of, what does this change mean for me, why it matters, and why now.
I love it. Okay, so a couple of ideas while we're here. Um, is there something I haven't asked you yet? Because there's a group of people on right now. I don't know who all is here. We have a couple of special guests at the very end. But is there something I haven't asked you that we should be talking about? Or did we just do a really are we just really that good?
I think we did a really good job really highlighting the difference in the platform that you talked about Gia. We talked about the importance of behavioral intelligence. We talked about, behavioral intelligence and the change that it can make, change communication. So I think we did a really good job for the listening audience, really giving them just a little bit of what we're doing and why it matters.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So for everybody who's on or listening later, remember you can jump on the calendar. You will be able to speak with one of our founders. It could be Jeff, it could be Vivek, it could be Anissa, but you will be speaking with somebody who is right in the middle of everything. So it's not like you're having to talk to me, who's like right on the outside of everything.
Well,
Doing like
Kelly, but don't take your role lightly, Kelly, because
I,
to have 300 registrations, Jeff didn't do any of that, because, Jeff can coach, teach, train, but I cannot market for my life. So thank goodness that
we
were able
work
to
well
fulfill the
together.
role here. Yes.
We work very well together. So we have a couple of people in the outside that I would
Okay.
like to invite on if they're still here, because I do believe that they have some questions. So I'm going to bring them on real quick. So I've got
Fantastic.
Gil and I have Robert. And guys, if you're still here, come on in and ask some questions. Thank you for being here.
Great. Dr. K, can I jump in, or do you want to start?
Gil, jump in.
Okay. And Jeff, earlier in the presentation, before we really started talking about building the trust muscle and getting started on that path towards blind trust, and which I know sometimes is referred to, you gave the example of the ripple, the pebble in the water, and the ripple, it becomes a wave and it becomes a tsunami. And then we're at a point where we have the blind trust, which is an amazing state to reach. And I understand that can all be managed. It can be measured. It can be observed. Prior to that, you talked about trust microactivations. Could you give an example or two of what a trust microactivation is?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Gil. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, always.
When you say things like, I appreciate you, right, and you accept them, and you acknowledge them, and you affirm them, and you make them seen, valued, and heard, and you say, hey, how might we do this different? Those conversations set up micro trust activations and build the trust muscle. And then change becomes a little easier, because now we're not lifting 5-pound weights. When those micro trust activations begin to strengthen, now we can lift 10-pound weights, right? And I talk about this in my training with teams. I said, some of you can lift 5-pound weights right now. Some of you can lift 25-pound weights, because you have different perspectives of trust and different trust strengths. At the end of the day, we'll customize a trust solution for you so you can lift the weight that's appropriate for you. So all those things create that wave and that tsunami. And Gil, to use your term, those things create workability, greater workability.
Nice. Thank you. That's a good question.
Thanks for that. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Robert, what would you like to jump in with? Oh, I might have you on. Is it possible that you're muted? Try again.
Dr. K, can you hear us? He may not be able to hear us.
I don't think he can hear us. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, Dr. K. If you can hear us at any point, just jump in. We might just have him. All right, did you guys mute him before he came on? Did we not know this? All right. So, Gil, while we're getting Dr. K on, any other questions that you have?
I wanted to point to something I think about that does lead to a question. The work that I focused on as a manager in organizations, and I've done some consulting on, is all about this term bringing workability into an organization. So people have the ability to be effective in their jobs. And part of that is making sure they have the information they need to do their job, that they have the tools to do the job properly, and that they have training in how to use those tools. And that's part of the leader's role, is to make sure that's available. And in my experience, often the person who knows best what's needed, what information, what tools, what training, is the person who's actually doing the job. And very often they won't come forward and ask for what they need. And they'll sit back and struggle because they don't trust that it's safe to do that it's safe to come forward and ask for what they need. I might look like I'm incompetent. I might look like I'm the squeaky wheel. I might look like I'm complaining. And so how does that, it seems to me that underlying all that, there's a trust deficit. And so, Jeff, when you identify that, where do you start looking? What process gets kicked off when you realize people, they don't trust that they can ask for what they need in an organization?
We'll see quiet obsolescence, right? Where people don't speak up. They may not show up for a meeting. They may show up late for a meeting. There's little activations that say that people aren't buying in, right? When we don't hear, we're not giving a voice in that process. But there's little things that we could pay attention to, even body language when we're talking about this. If we're coaching them, we can pick up on those little micro behavioral activations that signal, I don't trust you. That's a short answer. I know we're running short on time. I wish we could answer and get into that a little more, Gil, but that's a great question. Dr. K, can you hear us now? Can you speak now?
Yeah,
No?
yes, I can hear you, and I apologize. I had
That's okay.
I had a little conflict there, so I had to step out for a minute. And but everything you're saying is great. I was thinking it from a district perspective. I had a superintendent, one of my clients, to give me a call, so I had to address something we got coming up for a conference we're speaking at. So I'm really excited about it. I talked to Jeff a lot about it. And then looking at AI, one of the things I've also discussed with Jeff, not more than trust, but there's no AI without HI, human intelligence. And looking at adopting it with a district and putting it within a district framework, I look at how can we use AI in an ethical way with students, with teachers, and delivering a product to make sure everyone is engaged, but they still, the one way I looked at it is looking at project-based learning. So if you're using AI and you're coming up with an excellent project and you can explain that project, you can learn from that project, I can see that being an acceptable use of AI. So I'm focusing right now, and I learned a lot from Jeff on this. I'm looking at achievement, behavior, and climate. How can I use AI, Jeff, in improving achievement, improving behavior, and overall school climate?
Thanks for the question, Dr. K. I would say when we're looking at AI across a district level, we're thinking about, again, multiple levels, not only working with the kids and the teens and young adults that are involved in the actual process of experiencing the product itself, but we also have to start with the decision makers, right? Because they have to have buy-in too, because as the decision makers trust what's being the output of AI, is it fair? Is it just? right? All those things that the stakeholders are concerned about at that level can then flow into directly working with kids and teens. And that's how we start looking at our mentor grade AI, Dr. K, where we can now build behavioral self mastery. We can build emotional intelligence. We can build intrinsic motivation because we're not having just a one-way static conversation. GIA, the tool that we have, is programmed specifically with everybody's behavioral wiring, and we can customize the language and the nuances within that platform. So everybody's having a different conversation based on the level of where they're at in their growth process, even up to the district and the superintendent level. We can do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I also like the scans that you can do as well, because say you're trying to really integrate what you're doing in the community. And if you're a new superintendent, you can scan your community and look at the behavioral insights of the individual stakeholders you want to be involved with and engage with.
Yeah. It's some very amazing things that we can do. That's why, Kelly, we're going to turn it back over to you, but scan this QR code, have a conversation directly with one of our leaders, whether it's Anitza, Vivek, or even myself. Dr. K mentioned the behavioral scans. We call it our behavioral X-ray vision, Dr. K. For those of you that are wondering in the audience, we don't have to actually have you engage in our questionnaire. If you give us your first name, your last name, your job title, and your company, we can get about 70% accuracy of your behavioral DNA. Nobody's doing that. And it's a free gift that we give to people. That's how we're going to build trust in our communities. That's how we're going to build trust in our schools, in our businesses, in our families. Thank you so much, Kelly, for having me on today. I want to thank Anissa. She couldn't be here today, but this was a very powerful conversation.
Yes, very powerful. And guys, thank y'all for joining us. I mean, we've never done this before, and it's really nice because we're getting questions and input from outside of what Jeff and I would normally be talking about. So y'all were great. And for everybody who's watching, who's still here, don't forget, jump on the calendar because there are spaces, or there may not be any spaces left. I noticed a lot of people were scanning that QR code while we were talking. But I will tell you that this is AI for good, like forever for good. And you'll find there's a lot going on here that we really enjoy doing. So thank you again to everyone who's here. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Jeff. You were amazing. And to everybody who's watching later, have a wonderful time. Have a wonderful day.